Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is 4:30, and I can confirm that we are streaming and the recording is on. You can begin your meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I see that we have quorum. Good afternoon, councillors, senior leadership team, and our viewing public. With quorum, I will declare this meeting of July 25th at 4:30 p.m. in session. And we will have the land recognition statement read by Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of them who continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Before we move any further with the agenda, if Council will indulge me, I have a note from the Fire Chief, Chief Limburner, who was away on holidays this week, but he just wanted to thank the community for their support in the food drive that the firemen had on Saturday. They ended up collecting $3,700 monetary contributions and 3,000 pounds of food, with all proceeds going to Pelham Cares. So it was a great effort by the firemen and great help and effort by the community to pitch in as they always do. So thank you for that. To you, Madam Clerk.
Through you, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are on the adoption of the agenda, and I do have an amendment presented by Councillor Hildebrandt, seconded by Councillor Olson, that the agenda be amended to move item 10.2.1 invasive species European water chestnut staff report to immediately follow item 4.2.1 invasive species center delegation, and to move item 10.2.9 recommendation report Town of Pelham comprehensive zoning bylaw and housekeeping official plan amendment to immediately follow item 10.2.3 capital project budget exceedance report to Mr. Mayor for discussion.
Okay, thank you. After hearing of these amendments, is there any discussion? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur. Oh, it looks like Councillor Kaur is still just connecting to audio. If we can just give him a moment. Councillor Kaur, this is for the First Amendment to the agenda. If I could have your vote, please. Councillor Kaur, can you just confirm that you can hear me? Councillor Kaur, are you able to hear me? I will just... Oh. Sorry, iPad. This is not Councillor Kaur. This must be maybe one of our delegations. Ms. Miller could just move that individual into the waiting room. That would be appreciated. And I apologize. It looks like Councillor Kaur is not here. However, I did just send him an email with the Zoom link. However, we do, of course, still have quorum. So I will carry on with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. I do have an amendment being put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt, seconded by Councillor Olson, that the agenda be amended to include the addendum which was circulated earlier to Council. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. On this amendment, is there any discussion? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That carries. Gee, Mr. Mayor, you are now on the disclosure of pecuniary interests.
Okay, thank you. After reviewing the agenda, does any councillor have a disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof to declare? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I have so noted. Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to your delegations. We do have the invasive species. We do have Colin Casson here presenting. I'll just ask Ms. Miller to please bring in our presenter into the meeting. You can just give us one moment. Mr. Casson, we can see you. You are now in the meeting. I do just remind you that our delegations have 10 minutes to present. You're welcome to begin your presentation whenever you wish.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. And give me 2 seconds here to share my screen and we'll be up and running here. Okay. Please let me know if you can't see that. Good evening, everybody. I'm not Karen Alexander. My name is Colin Casson. I'm coming to you this evening from Peterborough, Ontario. And here just to give you a quick update on some of the work we've been fortunate enough to be working with our local partners throughout the Welland River. A very quick roadmap of the time I've got. I just want to talk about the Invasive Species Center very quickly, give you a brief introduction, tell you a little bit about European water chestnut, the species of interest to us that's locally relevant to you folks, and also give you an opportunity should you wish to ask any questions. Before I get into it, just want to acknowledge that the ISC, based in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, acknowledges that we're living and working on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people in the Robinson-Huron treating area. And we recognize the long history of Indigenous people and Métis people in this area and across Canada. I want to show respect to them and demonstrate our gratitude for their ongoing care of land and waters. Quickly about the Invasive Species Center, we're a not-for-profit that's based in Sault Ste. Marie. The very tangible version of this slide is that we're an organization that works with federal, provincial, municipal, regional governments of all kinds, local stakeholders, individual landowners, not-for-profit organizations, basically everybody with an interest in invasive species, and try and connect them together. Try and be a little bit more effective and efficient in our response collectively to invasive species, because we know invasive species, of course, know no jurisdictional boundaries. Ultimately, with an end game here of protecting Canada's environment, economy, and society. So we take an all-species approach. In European water chestnut, the species of the evening is certainly one of those. So this is European water chestnut. If you haven't paddled the Welland River, this is a quick snapshot of what it looks like in other spots. So this is a picture coming to you from Kingston, Ontario, which is one of 2 other populations outside the Welland River of this regulated invasive plant. It's an aquatic invasive plant. It's emergent and free floating on the top. So if you're out for walking the dog along the trail, you'd have a look in the water this time of year and certainly see it. If you're familiar with a white or a yellow water lily, same idea, floating along the surface of the water. The big difference, of course, is that this is an invasive species, a highly invasive species, and it forms really dense monocultures, one species populations that outcompete native species, outcompete other beneficial forms of wildlife and other fish and critters that are using our river. So this is what it looks like, and I'd like to tell you a little bit more about it in the next few minutes. We tend to speak about invasive species, all invasive species, through a few different lenses or buckets, realizing we're speaking to a different audience and different points we take home with different people. So with respect to some of the economic implications of this relatively sparse invasive species at a provincial level, it decreases property values. We see this with this species and a number of other species in the literature, that they can be tied to declines in individual property values. They have negative impacts on commercial fisheries. So of course, this is probably speaking to another species in another context with respect to being established within the Great Lakes, but it's still an important element as well. Of course, that same idea certainly holds true for tourism and also maybe more recreationally leaning species of fish. With respect to some of the social implications, which is really where a lot of our hearts lie, no doubt, it inhibits boating and swimming. Again, those dense monocultures really impede recreational watercraft, motorized or not, from getting through it. Can also be a real hindrance to trying to pull up to a dock or pull up to your property to get out once you've been out on the water. One of the real key take-home features here in terms of an impact and why is this an issue of concern are the sharp seeds and these seed pods. That's what you're seeing in the image in the center here, those spiny edges on this is the chestnut of the European water chestnut, well named. And so this is what it looks like kind of later in the season. I think if we went out in 2 weeks, if I took you out for a paddle and had a look, this is what we'd probably be coming across. And you know, that there's a seed out in the river, you know, some might say big concern. What's the big deal? Really what the challenge is that these seeds float. They float fairly long distances and they have a nasty tendency to wash up on the spot that I'm trying to access the water from. So if you're out there stepping in, whether it's a sandy access point, whether it's a cobbly or gravelly access point, if you're trying to use that just way down into the water, this is not your friend. This will pierce skin. This can pierce really thin sandals as well, and just really impedes how we use our space, how we use our water, and how we access it. Ecologically, if that's of interest to you, you know, one of the key ideas here is that there's such dense monocultures outcompeting those native species. Native species of plants are important biologically. They help build the food web and build the right conditions for other species like desirable fish species, species at risk, and so on. So no matter how you stack it up, maybe perhaps where your interests may lay, there's a number of different reasons, and certainly collectively, that's when we tend to see a lot of interest and action happening when we see all those impacts stacked together. I do want to make note for any policy wonks in the audience that it is a prohibited species under provincial regulation. So we have the Ontario Invasive Species Act as of 2015. This is one of the first groups of species that was regulated under that act. And the quick and dirty version of regulations under that act, this is the first time we have the ability through regulations in the province to restrict the possession, the import, the sale of the species. Basically, if you go and have it and try and hold it and want to do something with it intentionally, this is where this act would come into play. With respect to how it comes into play in some of the work that our team and volunteers are doing this year, really, I think that the most important part here is about disposal, about thoughtful and proper disposal efforts being done, and making sure that those plants that we're removing through our volunteer efforts that are being taken off of the water through our control actions are indeed being placed in the right place, disposed of in the most appropriate fashion. So these regulations, I should say, do give us some guidance on that and help. It is Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry that is responsible for working within this regulation, a group that our project is actually funded through, and we have a great working relationship. So really pleased to be adhering to all regulations associated with that. To zoom out and give you as broad of a picture in terms of where does this situation fit in, I wanted to provide you with this map. And I think the key takeaway note here is that there's really a relatively sparse population within Ontario. We know of one population in Ottawa, Ontario. We know of another population kind of in that Kingston area, with one individual find coming over here closer to Belleville. And really, the challenge and the reason I think where our organization, the Invasive Species Center, and many of our partners are notably concerned with the situation on the Welland River is that it's just so far away relative to our other known populations. I will note that all of these other populations are under active management in Ontario. Some have been going on for 7, 8, maybe even 9 years, the most long-standing one, and we do see great results happening. This is an annual species that, once it produces seed, there is a bit of a seed bank, which gives us a little bit of a legacy, a few years worth of inventory, if you will, of potential seeds to sprout. Maybe a seed planted or that falls this year might not sprout next year, it might sprout the year after. So really we see the most successful control programs happening in Ontario are ones with multi-year visions in mind. So I just wanted to note this, and really this is, being so far afield from the closest known population of European water chestnut really is the driver behind why we think this is an opportunity we need to get ahead of here. And so to tell the story very quickly for you, a report came in 2020 of a paddler and an off-duty, actually DFO biologist who was out there just on their own time paddling the beautiful Vidgeville and River, and they were out and they found 4 major populations, just a little bit kind of in Pelham and west. And really our known population right now is effectively they cast a big net between Wellandport and Welland, with a little bit more specificity in a moment here. But these are the 4 populations that person was able to report to us. We're really grateful that just that community scientist, that citizen scientist making the report, seeing a plant species they thought was problematic. They were not an aquatic invasive species expert. They just happened to be out for a paddle and noticed something felt wrong or felt off. So they made that report through a public smartphone app called EdMaps, and ultimately that report ended up finding its way to our desks. And so last year, summer 2021, we were able to take that. The field report came in quite late in 2020. In early 2021, we were able to mobilize a field response and really trying to answer the question, where is it? We know where those 4 populations are. There was just a dot on a map. They really didn't tell us the whole picture in terms of what's the solution, what's the scale and scope of a solution. And so we were able to start over here at the blue dot and head down right towards the canal. And this is roughly what we found in between. We've got a cleaned up version of this map, but I think this one tells the best story in terms of where was it and where is it worst. The green line here is really where it's worst. So just a little bit like at the airport and west is really kind of where our primary interest areas are. And those 4 original reports, that's this kind of pinkish dot, I suppose. There's 4 of those reports. Those are the ones that came in from that off-duty biologist when she was out paddling. So we're really pleased to see where we knew it was is really the core range. What we see with the yellow dots here are kind of individual free-floating plants. This is a rooted plant that has a root down to the bottom, springs up to the top, and remains rooted but floating on the top. And when we see, high wave action, maybe somebody going by a little bit too close, a little bit too quick, maybe a large storm event, maybe a wind event, we do see those plants break off and float downriver. And so that's what we're seeing down here in these fairly high volume of yellow dots are just individual floating plants. So I don't think it would be fair to say that's really where it's established. I think it's fair to say over east here is really where, at least to our knowledge last year, where the individuals are found. We did survey on the other side of the canal here, east of Welland, and we're happy to say that our current knowledge and our knowledge as of last year as well both tell us that this seems to be the spot. So this is a great opportunity. This is really the moment in time that we hope to try and get on these invasive species situations. And so what a proper response looks like to us is certainly something that requires a lot of folks at the helm here. It's a collaborative effort, and so community outreach is certainly an important element of that. And so if you've seen these lunch signs around, this is a small step, a small example of what we're trying to do here to get the word out on the species. So have you seen this plant? We've got these at all public access points here to the water to make sure that people who are using these waterways are aware of the species. Of course, nobody would spread it intentionally, but it's the unintentional spread that we're really focused in on and trying to maintain the current population and distribution to be where it's going to be. So we've been really fortunate to work with NPCA. They've given us invaluable opportunity to use their property, to have our field team based out of their location at Chippewa Creek. And we're really very fortunate and appreciative of everything they've contributed in kind to that project. We've been fortunate to work with some other municipalities as well to have public access opportunities and just a helpful friend when we need something, or most of our team or part of our team, I should say, is based remotely. So it's helpful to have some local support as well. And again, we're also accessing the EC Brown Boat Launch and grateful again to NPCA for allowing us to use those opportunities to access the water. But really, public access to the water in the core area where this plant infestation is a bit of a challenge. And so we have been kind of doing a call to action in any local media or any local engagement opportunities just to look for more Good Samaritan access points, frankly, to the waterway, because paddling a large volume of biomass off of the water can be a challenge when we're going large distances and makes our team less effective. So we're grateful for every opportunity to have more opportunities to access the water, especially when they're on private land. In terms of the work our team of 5 have been doing, I wanted to speak quickly to what does control look like. It's a little bit more detailed than what I'd say as follows here, but basically it's hand pulling. And there are in other communities different techniques. Some use herbicide application for large scale infestations. That's not the case. That's certainly not our vision for this project. It's an early control and response situation. So that's very much probably not the right tool for the situation at hand. Some other communities also use things like mechanical harvesters, like large combine on floats effectively. That again, this is not the condition, not the situation that we're seeing on the well end. And so really that hand pulling is the right tool for the toolkit. Integrated pest management requires us to think about a few different approaches used at different times and really make the best decision based on the best practices. We're right in line with that by doing physical removal. We've got a team of 3 boats out on the water 5 days a week this summer for more than 2 months now, and they're out hand pulling, and they can be quite selective and really make sure that they're getting every last individual plant. In terms of the project, this is a project that's midway and underway right now. We're about a month and change into our effort. So what we have been doing is working with NPCA, for instance, local paddlers associations, the Nature Club, basically anyone who's interested in heading out on the water and growing their capacity and interest in the species. If they're out using the water anyway, we want to get more eyes out looking for the species. We know where it is. We believe we know where it is, but it's always an opportunity, a possibility that it's in private ponds or adjacent waterways as well. So that's why we see a lot of value in training everyone we can to be aware of what the species look like. Again, we've been at this thanks to a partnership with the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, who provide through a Canada Summer Jobs Summer Student Program, our Hit Squad effort. So that's 4 of our 5 staff, and again, we have another staff that the ISC has hired to be on the water. Again, NPCA through Chippewa Creek is home base for them every day, and we're very grateful for that home base. But they do span everywhere between well and port and well and 5 days a week. And really this community engagement piece is, I think, one of our most important things beyond just pulling and removing the plant, which is primarily done through our staff, but really engaging with local landowners to, again, be our eyes on the water. And if they can lend a hand and pull and do so in accordance with our training and best practices, we certainly welcome it. But if nothing else, just helping us, have those conversations with landowners, access the water from new parts, and just work a little bit more collaboratively is really our target, really our goal here. I'd be lying to you if I thought that we could do this in 1 year. This is a multi-year effort. It's just in accordance with our learned experience from other projects happening in Ontario and other jurisdictions. So this is a multi-year effort. Some other invasive species responses are very high dollar value kinds of projects. This is the kind of project that is made to it is the perfect situation with respect to relatively low investment, being very stewardship friendly. Of course, it's on the water, so that adds some complexity, but we really have the opportunity ahead of us here to be successful. And really, I think a key to that success is not just the investment we've been able to get through Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, but just working with our local partners to see what kind of in-kind contributions or what kind of local support we can get from our partners to make our team more effective and ultimately have a better outcome for the community. And so, again, I've said it a couple of times, but I did just want to appreciate the NPCA for their contributions here. We've had Paddle with a Purpose events. We've had 2 tours, and that's basically just been open tours for anybody who can provide their own boat. If they can't provide a canoe or kayak, we try and find them something. But we've had a pair of events through the month of July, which have been very successful, well attended, also local media, and we're appreciative of that coverage as well. NPCA has also given us a biomass disposal area, which is a very appreciated gesture that we can take and create a safe compost place that's well off water, and certainly show appreciation for that. And just also helping us connect in with local landowners as well. And it really builds support base from the community and helps make this project much more effective. In terms of opportunities to become engaged, I didn't want to come here with a set of asks, but did just want to make note if there is an opportunity for engagement and there is interest, just wanted to riff off a couple quick opportunities here for you. In terms of, we need to find a way of connecting with landowners. Our team is local, but our organization is not. We're based in Sault Ste. Marie. I'm based in Peterborough, and we have staff based across the province, but we do appreciate kind of that local touch and that local engagement with individual landowners. If there's anything we can do there, for instance, municipalities have given us a hand in distributing some letters to waterfront owners, just our opportunity to check in with them, let them know that we're out there, ask them to give us a wave if they see us, and hey, if they're willing to let us use their waterfront as an access point, certainly find appreciation for that as well. If we can connect in using some of this information that we have on our project-specific website onto your municipality's website, we'd certainly appreciate the opportunity as well. Just want to make sure that our messaging is reaching the right audience here. When they see people out there pulling plants, we'd like them to have a little bit of background understanding on who we are and what are we pulling, and most importantly, why are we doing that? We have had a couple July-based events, but we do have an August 13th event. If anyone's interested and wants to get their paddle on, we'd certainly welcome anyone come on out and join us. It's going to be, I think, from EC Brown on the 13th, which is a Saturday. We also have a collaborative. This is just our opportunity to maintain open lines of communication with the community, with representatives from any municipality or kind of on any other like group in the area, Conservation Authority as well. We do just use this, we call the collaborative, which is a bit of a formal group. Just periodically when there's new updates, this is our communication mechanism to check in and deliver those kinds of program level updates, such as how much of the river did we cover, how many canoe strokes did we do, how many kilograms of plant material did we remove, etc. I think I'm coming up to 10 minutes, so I'll wrap here, provide you with my contact information, and again, express appreciation to your council for a willingness in hearing the message this evening and also working with us on our European water chestnut response.
Okay, thank you, Colin, for your presentation. Sorry to see that we have this invasive species in the Niagara Peninsula. I will open go to council for any questions that you may have to the presenter, and I see Councillor Kaur.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Colin. Thank you very much for your presentation. I was driving through Wainfleet and the feeder canals, and I noticed, again, from the distance from the car, miles and miles of similar products. Is that the same issue they have in Wainfleet?
So really our understanding, sorry.
Go ahead,
It's
Colin.
on the feeder canal.
Yeah, so we've been using a few techniques to monitor for it. I can't speak to that specifically on that location you were looking at. I would tell you that our visual surveys through the river are pretty selective, and we do have a pretty high confidence on where it is and where it isn't. We'll update this map to be a little bit more intricate with our GIS system for you as a bit of a wrap-up presentation, perhaps in the fall. We are using eDNA monitoring as well, Councillor Court, which I just let you know. So we're going upstream of that. We're able to collect water samples through a lab and eDNA, process those, and answer the question. We think we know it's up till here. Do those samples come back positive or not? So we're using visual surveys as well as that eDNA technology to be able to give us a little bit more confidence in our specific location. But to our own knowledge right now, basically that map that I showed you, the green line in particular, is really the established zone. And really just those individual floating plants, to our knowledge now, is really just those individual floating plants. Again, we'll have updated mapping for you, I think, as of Labor Day, basically when the project wraps.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments on the presentation? Not seeing any. Colin, again, thank you for taking the time to address council. And I know I've gone on Facebook, and I see that the kayak clubs are also taking to the river and trying to do their thing to contain this this pest. So the more we can get the word out, the better. That better chance we have of preventing a full-scale infection, I guess, of the thing. Mr. CAO, I see the request for the town is a person to, I guess, collaborate with the NPCA. Any comments on that request? Oh, I see. Wait.
Mr. Director Weeds, so I'll defer and then cross.
I see Ms. Weens. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry to interject like that. I have been collaborating with the Invasive Species Center with Karen Alexander from the center, And we've been working fairly closely with them, and I'm the contact person for this project with the center. And just for council's information, what we did to support the Invasive Species Center in this initiative is we did send letters to funding agencies when they were applying for grants to undertake this work. So we supplied letters of support for this initiative, knowing that it's a very important one, and the Welland River is certainly within our municipal boundary, and that we supported this initiative. We also sent letters out to all landowners in the town that have frontage on the Welland River, and provided them information on this. And the two paddle events that were in July last week, and then the one that's coming up, I believe. So we shared that information, and then we've also been sharing information on our social media site to also raise awareness of these events and their occurrences.
Oh, thank you very much for that, Director of Planning. Great to see that the town is indeed becoming involved in this initiative. Again, I'll reach out to council one last time. Any other questions or comments for Colin? Not seeing any. Colin, thank you for your presentation, and let's hope we have good luck in the battle.
Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council receive the delegation from Colin Casson, Manager of Policy for the Invasive Species Center, with respect to the European water chestnut in the Welland River, for information. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any discussion.
Okay, any further discussion from council? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to our staff report, the invasive species European water chestnut, and I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2022-156 invasive species European water chestnut for information, and that Council declare the European water chestnut a noxious weed within the town of Pelham, and that Council support and endorse a request to declare the European water chestnut a prohibited species in Ontario. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on this resolution? I'm sorry, is that a resolution?
Yes, it's the resolution
Okay.
attached to the report.
Thank you. Any discussion on the resolution? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, that brings us to our next item on the agenda. We do have a registered delegate. It is the Gail, who is the Band Shell Committee's chair. I just confirmed with Ms. Miller that she's not yet arrived to the waiting room. Ms. Miller, can you confirm if our delegate is here?
Actually, I've just spoken with Gail, and she's asked if Annie Holtby, who is in the waiting room, can speak on her behalf.
Oh, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if council is okay with that, I do know that Gail was had to go somewhere later today, but she has sent someone in her stead. Is that okay?
Yes. Any objections from any councillor on the substitute speaker? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. I'll just ask Ms. Miller to bring Annie in. Thanks, Annie. We can see that you are in the meeting. If you like, you can turn on your screen, and you're welcome to do your presentation. You have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Just get there. Thank you. So I'm speaking for Gail Balchis today. And so if I say aye, it's Gail. Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, and town staff. I'm Gail Balchis Chataway, volunteer chairperson of the Fonthill Bandshell Concerts, an entirely volunteer-run, free community event held each Thursday evening from the middle of June to early September in Peace Park, Fonthill. A 10-person non-paid board of directors and a small group of volunteers organize the events, donating some 1,500 hours of service annually. I'm speaking today with their full support and on their behalf. The Fonthill Bandshell is a community-built structure donated to the town of Pelham during Fonthill's 150th anniversary celebrations in 2006. At that time, it was estimated that the structure was valued at $120,000. The park was upgraded in 2019 through our fundraising events in a campaign called Jazz Up the Park. With sincere thanks to community businesses and the public support and generosity, our group completed approximately $100,000 worth of improvements to Peace Park with that effort. While Peace Park is in Fonthill, the town of Pelham is the center of the Niagara region. Our Fonthill Bandshell concert attendees come from Pelham, Wainfleet, Dunnville, Port Colborne, Welland, Thorold, Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, Lincoln and Grimsby, even Hamilton and Guelph. Those attending include seniors, families, and young people. The concerts are a weekly source of community for many, including the physically and mentally challenged from our community care homes and the aging from our many seniors' residences. It is not only a place to enjoy music, but a place to reunite with friends, old and new, to enjoy the play of children and join in or just watch the people, young and old, dancing in front of the bandshell, on the closed street, and along the sidewalks. It's a warm, welcoming community destination. The Thursday evening concerts bring together an average of 2,500 people each week, with some events reaching to as many as 5,000 attendees. During at least the past decade, the concert series has become an economic generator for the community as people come not only to the bandshell, but also to downtown Fonthill for dining and shopping before and after the concerts. They frequent the farmers market and regularly sell out the supper market vendors. The summer concert series has re-energized Pelham and helped bring back vibrancy to our downtown core. Tonight you have the opportunity to further enhance the central core by agreeing to the Town Hall building addition to provide permanent year-round public washrooms. We understand that a large portion of it will be provided through third-party funding. The days, costs, and unsightly and smelly porta potties may soon be behind us. Permanent public washrooms will certainly make our attendees a much happier group and take the strain off local businesses, your single town hall main floor washroom and the library. Only this past Thursday, I had to provide directions to the closest Tim Hortons and Starbucks for a couple of ladies who simply could not fathom using the portable toilets. I must admit, I personally can relate to those ladies. In light of the town's growth in recent years and more expansion ahead, with the number of wonderful events based in the town of Pelham, particularly centered around Peace Park, your bandshell volunteers feel it's long overdue to have permanent public washrooms to service our residents as well as visitors to our lovely town. It sets the right tone to offer professional and accessible facilities within our town hall and Peace Park setting. A permanent public washroom would allow broader hours of access during events and should be available 7 days a week and into the evenings until 10 p.m. or so. Similar sized municipalities have multiple permanent public washrooms available to their citizens. Think of Lincoln's Charles Daly Park, Grimsby's Beamer Falls, and Coronation Park as quick examples. We strongly encourage you to move forward with this project, not only for our Thursday summer patrons, but also for the town staff, the farmers market, and supper market. Summerfest, Christmas in Pelham, and all the year-round events happening in and around Peace Park and Town Hall. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening on this issue.
Okay, thank you very much, Annie, for your filling in for Gail. Admirable job, by the way. Any comments or questions to the presenter from members of council? Well, I would just like to say that I agree wholeheartedly with you. The town has definitely outgrown the porta potty phase. I know I use these items when I go to an international plowing match that's out in the middle of a field, and that's everyone expects you have to use them there, but the time of using them in our beautiful town in downtown Pelham, I think has hopefully has definitely passed. So we'll see what council's decision is later on in the evening. And again, I thank you for your presentation. And once again, I will, before we go, any comments or questions from any councilors? And I do not see any. Again, Annie, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council receive the delegation from Annie Holbert with respect to the addition of washroom facilities and storage at Town Hall for information. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, any further discussion? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. 1. SC04/2022 Special Council, June 20th, 2022. RC 12-2022 Regular Council, June 20th, 2022. 3. SC 05/2022 Special Council, June 27th, 2022. 4. SC 06/2022 Special Council, July 12th, 2022. To you, Mr. Mayor, to call for any errors or omissions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. After looking at the minutes read by the clerk, is there any councillor that notes needs to make any additions or omissions to these minutes? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to item 7 on the agenda, which is the request to lift consent agenda items. If any member of council wishes to lift an item, certainly please let the mayor know. And council may discuss any other item on the consent agenda without having to lift it. You only need to lift it if you change the resolution attached. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is there any item on the consent agenda that any councillor would like to lift? And I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Item 8.5.1, the Arrive Can app.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. I have noted that. Are there any other items?
I see Councillor Carr. Councillor Carr, do you have an item you wish to lift?
Yes, I'm sorry. 8.5.4.
Okay, thank you.
Those are the comments from Mr. Tim Nohara, is that correct? For
Yes.
the zoning bylaw? Thank you. Mr. Mayor, are there any other items?
Okay, does any other councillor have any other items they would like lifted? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Both of those have been listed. Therefore, you're on the consent agenda for considering. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the July 25th, 2022 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved, save and accept items 8.5.1 and 8.5.4. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, Are we going to go in any special order, Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will do this in blocks. The first items for consideration for discussion would be the consent agenda for the presentations and recommendations arising from COW and P&P and the minutes associated. If any members of council have any discussion on that, now would be the time.
And just for clarification, Madam Clerk, that's basically down to, is it 8.37 would be the last?
That would be within the staff reports. I'm thinking just 8.1 and 8.2 for now.
Oh, okay. Sorry, COW reports. Okay. Anyone want to discuss the numbers by the clerk? Again, Madam Clerk?
8.1 and 8.2.
Okay.
These are relating to the planning meetings.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Any comment? I see Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. 8.3.2, Director Van Ravensway, if I could ask a question, a couple of questions.
Yes.
First of all,
go ahead.
Sorry. I have a couple of questions for Ms. Van Ravensway. First of all, I noted that one of the picnic tables were painted by the homeschool families. I just think that is one of the best things I've heard, and you see these small things in the reports, and that's one of the best things that I've seen in a long time, to remember and include those families that might not normally get to take part in the things in the schools and things. So I just want to acknowledge and appreciate that on the part of your staff. And as I've said to you many times, it's like it's almost like you go out of your way to surprise us with the things that you can do to make things better in our town. My question for you is, we have a, I believe the company's name is Monteith, and we've awarded a contract to do a plan for all of our parks and recreation. And my question for you is about the Bradshaw, the nature park, and that park is now 20 years old, and I just wondered if we were sure that we were still operating within the expectations of this generous donor, because it really is a unique property, and I just wanted to make sure that would be considered. And I also wanted to wonder about the Cenotaph Park at the town hall, because I think there could be some things that could be done there to enhance the Cenotaph Park. But I have no ideas to suggest to you or anything, but be looking forward to that if somebody came up with them. So that's my question for you.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the compliments. I'll pass them on to the staff. As well, with regard to the Recreation, Culture, and Wellness Master Plan, Parks Master Plan, we've started to work with the consultant, and we will be touring all of the facilities. So they will have comments with regard to all of the facilities, including Bradshaw Park. And I believe you're referring to the Peace Park, the Cenotaph and the Peace Park. Is that correct?
I'm referring to the one at the Old Town Hall.
Oh, okay, in Ridgeville. Yes, yeah. That will also be included in the plan as well. So it will be a thorough master plan update, including all the parks, cultural activities, and the facilities. And it should lead us into the, between 10 and 15 year period.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. exciting.
Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And council will remember that this money was awarded the town in a grant. So these will have no effect on the tax levy. Any other questions? We kind of did open up the boundaries somewhat. 8.32. Anyone? Let's go down to 8.37. And from anywhere from 8.1 to 8.37. Is there any more comments? Oh, wait. I see the treasurer, Madame Quinlan.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify the last comment that you made. the master plan for the recreation is part of the capital project. It is not funded by a grant.
I'm
It's part
sorry.
of the 2022 capital project. I just want that clarified.
Yes, excellent, very good,
Now,
thank you.
We do have a modernization grant to do the RCW review of all of the activities. So you are correct in that aspect. We do have a grant for the RCW review that's currently being done by KPMG.
Okay, very good. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that. I see Councillor Hildebrand, I believe you had a hand up.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. I'm looking at the Cow report 8.3.4, and what I want to draw council's attention to is the fact that the BAS system was basically completed with the internet access and the protection by the end of April. The three components of the success of these types of operation are the hardware controllers with internet capability on the equipment. The second part is the program, and this unique program was adopted from the MCC that we're successfully using over there. And the third part is the remote access availability to the staff to monitor and adjust the program to adjust the operating facilities. And that's why the MCC, for instance, was able to reduce their energy costs by $150,000 over the projected cost by design. So that was a significance. And we're expecting the same thing for the town hall as well, once that gets going. And I hope to bring a report before the end of this term, like council, based on the Utilities Sustainability Committee, and show you the system and its savings. With that, I'd also like to make the mention of the fact that those are the only two buildings that have an automated BAS system, which is really, really sad. And that's one of the goals that I think we're going to promote in the new council's term. The fact is, the old town hall, for example, used more cubic meters of gas than the town hall did. And that's because basically the old town hall thermostat is set 69 degrees. We all know in our home, if we have an internet-enabled smart thermostat, most homeowners, I would say, and all the new houses have those installed, it'll allow at least one or two staff remote access to the system to adjust the temperature via the thermostat app and internet based on usability. It's as simple as installing a Cisco wireless cellular gateway with Bell SIM from your provider. The one-time hardware cost, for instance, for that gateway is $500, and plus whatever the mobile phone plan is. And the town has very reasonable plans. That's the kind of systems I believe we're going to be doing with the help of grants that our corporate service department has achieved. And that the payback for these systems on such a basic system is easy within a year. I think all new building additions and anything we do in the future has to have this technology made available. So thank you for this opportunity to speak on this.
And thank you, Councillor, for bringing us up to speed on those items. We appreciate that. Councillor Olson, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to Mr. Marr or Mr. Cook with respect to the LED streetlight conversion project. We had an investment grade analysis done of the grade audit done of the investment. What was the payback on that? Do you recall, or?
Mr. Marr?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To answer your question, that study is not yet complete. We are in discussions with Realtor and they're carrying that out. We should have something back to council in September, which will lay out what the payback is and what the actual savings that the town could realize with the conversion. So that'll be coming to council in September.
Okay, thank you. And another question, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to recognize the fact that it's pretty difficult to find a pothole in some of our rural roads now, and the effort by the town staff has been tremendous there, because I think from the looks of things, the roads were broken up a little more this spring, probably because of the severity of the winter. So I want to make that comment. I also want to ask you about crosswalks and line painting because we're coming up to the school year, and I did a little tour, and the best crosswalk we probably have is my old spot in front of Glen A. Green School. And I understood last year, I think we understood that it was because of a shortage of supply chain issues and that type of thing. Is that going to be contracted to the region to do?
And to the director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I disagree. I think the best crosswalk in the town is at Port Robinson and Pelham Street, the new green colored crosswalks that we installed as part of the Pelham Street project.
That's my old spot, I'm telling you.
Ryan may want to comment. I know with respect to the region doing our line marking, we're not able to secure them again this year. We have secured a line painting contractor to do our edge lines and center lines. And we're currently in the process of trying to source a contractor to do our stop bars and crosswalks. I do believe there is material shortages as well, which is contributing to the issue, but Ryan, you may have a comment on that.
Ryan?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we have been in contact with a number of different contracted service providers for the crosswalks and stop bars, especially in school areas. Having a really hard time getting someone to commit to doing that. They are all claiming that there is a national paint, like road paint shortage. And it's either that or equipment failure or a number of other COVID-related supply chain issues. So I think we're probably going to be able to get this done in time for school, but right now it's a bit up in the air.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that answer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I want to go back to item LED streetlights.
Yes, go ahead.
And to the director, the question I have to ask is, you give a great report on it, but the question is, are the costs going to be within the budget for that LED streetlight conversion program?
To the director?
To you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, we're projecting that the cost will be within our allocated budget. If you recall, Realterm, when they presented the proposal to the town, they estimated that the cost to the full project was approximately $622,000. We have gone as far as going up to tender and procurement on different manufacturers of the lighting systems themselves. So we do have some material costs for the project. My guess is that we would be close to the budget that Realterm had presented. Definitely within our budget, because we allowed for a little bit of contingency on there. We have experienced material increases on a lot of our projects, so there's no reason to believe that this wouldn't be exempt from that. But yeah, this is something that as well we will bring back to council for information in September. As part of that investment grade audit report, they will lay out what the cost is moving forward with the full conversion project. So that'll be coming in a further report.
Thank you, Director. Councillor?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I have a question, if I may, for 8.3.3. That's Planning and Development Cow Report to Director of Planning, Ms. Weens. I see that last year we ended up hitting 400 building permits. I was wondering if you could look into your crystal ball. I see the first part of this year we were down somewhat. It looked like in June we bounced back. Any indication in the last 30 days as to what, if you could give us a glance into the future?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Yeah, certainly June and July have been very busy. There's been lots of applications coming in, and we've been issuing quite a few permits. Typically for the summer months, they are our busiest months. And we do expect the busy period to extend into the fall. Right now, the Saffron Meadows Phase 3 subdivision, they are servicing that as we speak, and we expect that that will be opened up and building permits being made available in that subdivision. If not by the end of July, certainly within to August. And so I'm aware that a number of builders in that subdivision have sold lots, so there will be continuing to be a demand for building permits in the next few months.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And one other question to you, if I may, in reference the FAR drainage study. Is that study now underway?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, that study is underway. Consultants have been out. My understanding is they were out last week doing some field surveying. I will be following up with them this week. We need to organize and schedule a community meeting, and that's kind of next up on the agenda to get that organized.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other questions going down to 8.37? And this, of course, is just so that we don't jump all over the page. 8.37 or earlier. Any more comments, or we will go on to the next block? Madam Clerk, any suggestions?
Thank you. The next block are the staff reports.
Okay, thank you. Rough numbers, please.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you. It's 8.3.7 to 8.3.12.
Okay, so going down to 8.312, we have done 8.37. Any comments on the consent agenda items in that range? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. That would bring us to 8.4. These are the action items of routine correspondence. Oh, sorry. We go to the information correspondence, and that's 8.5.1 to 8.5.9.
Excellent. Any comments on the action? Oh, sorry.
Information correspondence.
On the
items.
information correspondence items. Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Then we go to the committee minutes for information, and that's 8.71 and 8.72.
Okay, 8.71 to 8.72. Any comments, questions on those two items? Not seeing any. And Madam Clerk?
Thank you. So this is for the consent agenda to be received, and recommendations therein contained approved, save and accept 8.5.1 and 8.5.4. This vote begins with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to the items which have been lifted. Our first item is 8.5.1, lifted by Councillor Hildebrandt. Just for ease, I'll read it into the record. The original motion attached is, be it resolved that Council receive correspondence dated May 31st, 2022 from the town of Fort Erie regarding cross-border travel and arrive can for information. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add an amendment to that motion, which includes that the town clerk is hereby directed to circulate a copy of this resolution to the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, local MPs, and local area clerks. That's exactly what the mayors of both Fort Erie and Niagara Falls were asking.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. I do believe that this is a motion to support, endorse, and circulate. I do have Councillor Hildebrandt as the mover for that amendment. I would be looking for a seconder.
Okay, is there a seconder? I see Councillor Hahn with her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You can discuss further.
Okay, any discussion on this? Go ahead, Councillor Hildebrandt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been notified by business travelers that frequently flying into Toronto, the residents are having trouble because the app isn't working. And you can imagine what it's like when these big jets land and the app doesn't work and everything is held back. That has to do with international travel when they're flying anytime. That's a problem for the residents. The other problem is at the border. Number one, I heard from the head of the commission of the 3 border points in town. the average wait time used to be processing time for a vehicle with no issues was 1 minute. That now is effectively doubled. It takes a minimum of 2 minutes, and I don't even know how they have those facts, but that's the facts that they're stating. The problem the residents are having is when the app doesn't work, you're probably heading into the office, and then if they can't get the system to work there, you're probably in there an hour, and then eventually they get thrown out. But the sad part is after that, then they get harassed by some employee many times in the future. And these seniors cannot understand why this app has not been taken away at this point, because obviously there's technical problems with it and there's problems with crossing the border. So that's why I'm highlighting this and endorsing this, and also the economic factors that Fort Erie and Niagara Falls are listing. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Hildebrand. Councillor Hahn, you seconded the motion. Any comments?
Yes, through the mayor, I think Councillor Hildebrand said it very well. I think it's a first world nation. It's ridiculous that we're still under the gun on this, and it's so deeply flawed and extended. So it's actually hard to imagine. It's hurting our tourism and overall our economy. So I think that the time has come for this for sure to be rectified.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions on the motion? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So for the amendment, the vote begins with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. That brings you to the main motion as amended. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any discussion on the main motion as presented? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. For the motion as amended, I will use the same mover and seconder, Councillor Hildebrand and Councillor Hahn, and the vote begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, that brings you to your next item from the lifted items, which is the comments concerning the draft zoning bylaw from Mr. Tim O'Hara. Councillor Kaur lifted this, and for clarity, the resolution attached is be it resolved that Council receive correspondence from Tim O'Hara dated July 13th, 2022, regarding concerns with the draft comprehensive zoning bylaw for information. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, Councillor Kaur.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Planning and Development. I just wondered, is there a way of either grandfathering some of these issues that he brought up? I could understand his frustration is he's probably planning, and many other residents were planning on the old bylaws, and all of a sudden within less than a year, we have changed those. Is there a way of grandfathering this? Because to get a second dwelling unit, they probably had some drawings or some development or someone coming out and advising them. I just wondered if there's a possibility of getting some of these issues grandfathered.
To you, Director of Planning.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So I think what Councillor Kaur is referring to are the sort of tweaks, I guess I could use that word, that were made to the second dwelling unit provisions in the zoning bylaw. There were some adjustments made to it, and what I can advise is those adjustments were made to ensure that the bylaw complies with the Greenbelt Plan policies. We had discussions with the region, and they indicated that the original bylaw as adopted by council could be interpreted to permit second dwelling units that was in contrary to the policies in the Greenbelt Plan, and so that's why the changes were made. The Greenbelt Plan is very specific and indicates that second dwelling units can only be permitted in an existing or in a dwelling or in an existing accessory building and outside of the Greenbelt natural heritage system. So the tweaks that were made with respect to second dwelling units in the bylaw were made to ensure that we conform with the Greenbelt plan and to provide clarity so that there isn't any question with respect to non-compliance with the Greenbelt plan and its policies.
Councillor?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Planning and Development. So we're just cleaning up. We weren't perfect on the first go around on the SDU bylaw, so we're just cleaning it up and making sure that we're following all the rules and regulations. Is that what we're doing?
To the Director?
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, that is correct. And the language that was in the bylaw originally could have left, you know, a wrong interpretation, and so we are cleaning that up.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Greenbelt trumps all. Is that not correct, Madam Director?
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, that is correct. We do need to conform with the provincial plan and policies, and in this case, it's very specific about where second dwelling units are permitted in that plan area.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. Thank you. To Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this motion is to receive the correspondence for information, and the vote will begin with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I see Councillor Stewart has
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't just waving. I have a question.
Okay.
This is to Director Weens. I'm wondering, is there mapping available that would show an overlay of the Greenbelt area over the entire town of Pelham so that it's easily readable?
To the Director.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. Yes, certainly we have mapped the Greenbelt Natural Heritage System in the zoning bylaw, so that is clear as well. That mapping currently doesn't exist in our current zoning bylaw. And so that area is mapped, and the area that is in the Greenbelt plan is zoned specialty agriculture, and the agricultural area that is outside of the Greenbelt plan is zoned agricultural. So there is a distinction between the two agricultural zones. One is in the Greenbelt plan area, and one is outside of the Greenbelt plan area. And then the Greenbelt plan natural heritage system is also mapped.
Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hahn?
Through the mayor to the director. Okay, so just for clarity then, so when we passed the secondary dwelling units, and in town, basically, I think it was 850 square feet, and then in rural, it was 1,000 square feet, if I remember correctly. So those folks that jumped on that and endeavored in the past umpteen months then to proceed to go down that road and build those units are I guess, inhabited by whoever has taken them on. But now, once we pass this, if now we're catching really an error, and that is that the Greenbelt does not allow for those per the legislation that already exists in the province, not municipality. What now? So basically, if somebody was really quick right off the hop and went down that road and endeavored to do that, they're in the clear. And then people who are on the cusp of doing it and have got their building designs and ready to go and build it, they are just they're just left in the lurch. Is that how I understand it? This is how this is going to go down?
To the director, although I believe that the knowing the planning department, you probably caught that. You would have had to go through the Greenbelt, but go ahead, Director Weens.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, we haven't had any situation in the Greenbelt plan area where somebody applied for a second dwelling unit that didn't conform with the Greenbelt plan policies. So that we don't have that issue where someone builds a secondary or a second dwelling unit that doesn't comply, that's not the circumstance.
Okay, so nobody's just left out there kind of, in betwixt the two scenarios.
That's correct. And certainly, Mr. Nahara's letter that he sent in, it's the first time that we became aware that he was interested in a second dwelling unit. He did talk previously about one on his residence, and at that time we explained to him the requirements under the Greenbelt plan.
So nobody in the Greenbelt, which is a pretty big chunk of the town, really, can have a secondary dwelling unit.
Yes, they can have a secondary dwelling unit if their property is outside of the natural heritage system. They can have a second dwelling unit within a single detached dwelling or in an existing accessory building. But you can't build a new accessory building to permit a second dwelling unit, for example.
And so an accessory building can be just a shed or a garage or something like that.
Yes, you could convert an existing garage into a second dwelling unit if you're in the Greenbelt plan area, or you could take part of a barn perhaps and convert a portion of that into a second dwelling unit. Again, if you're outside of the natural heritage system, that certainly is allowed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this item? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Again, this is for receiving for information, and the vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to reports from members of council, and Councillor Olson does have a verbal report regarding the Niagara Transit Commission.
Okay. Councillor Olson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to report on the first, I guess it's the first month and a half of the operation of the new Niagara Transit Commission. And I want to acknowledge, first of all, the effort of the CAO and our Director of Recreation, Culture, and Wellness for their efforts, because many of the things that we're doing right now stand on the work that was done by that group prior to the establishment of the commission. So at this point, we have a chair of our commission, and that is Walter Sendzik, who is the mayor of St. Catharines. And under his leadership, we're into a 90-day plan, which includes hiring a general manager, developing a strategy for harmonized fares and technology, collective bargaining with the unions, and a branding exercise, which is probably the next big thing on the table. By year end, we have to have a operational and capital budget. And next year, we will complete our strategic plan for the Transit Commission. We're still operating under the agreements that were made with the various municipalities, which include a transit system with one schedule, with one website and one app to help plan trips. Connection to Go Transit as both services are expanded and enhanced. Support for local businesses and economic development by connecting employers with new customers, employees, and opportunities. Boost tourism by connecting people to world-class destinations and activities in Niagara. Connect seniors to their community so they can access service, see family and friends, and maintain independence. Improve access to healthcare facilities. Enhance innovation by using new methods to serve communities through improved on-demand transit. And leading-edge fare payment technology. And finally, create a more accessible and equitable system by ensuring that all residents have similar access to services. So those are the hallmarks of the new Niagara Transit Commission, and that's what we agreed to when we signed up for it as part of the triple majority vote. So That's the report for our first meeting. I expect to come back sometime in October, maybe October or November, and we'll have news about a new general manager, and we'll have news about our negotiations in the labor contract. This will be an organization that will have some 150 vehicles. It will also have some 450 employees, and our goal right now is to get the budget finished so that we don't have any incremental costs because of the size of the organization. It will be a fairly large organization with a lot of complication that comes with any transit system. So that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you for that update on the Transit Commission. It's obviously going to be playing a big part in the lives of us in the region, and it's great to see that the steps continue to be going forward. Any comments, questions? I see Councillor Kaur.
Yes, I have a question for Councillor Olson. What do you think the budget will be I presume in the millions of dollars, and what would a director of transportation be making?
I'm not right at this time at liberty to say anything about the cost of about the salary for the general manager. We still have the budget to work our way through, but I'll make sure that when we have it, I'll report both of those things. They're just not available at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments on the Councillor Olson's report? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that brings you to your first staff report. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2022-0163, naming opportunities for the late Jane Haste for information, and that Council authorize and direct staff to proceed with option blank in honor of Jane Haste. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Great, thank you. If I could, Council, I would like to defer any further action on this item. I will take the staff recommendations back to family members, and they can discuss among themselves how they think Jane would like to be remembered, whether it be a park or trails. And they would obviously include the family, make the family feel more inclusive in this act. Is there, knowing that, I will indeed open it up for discussion if there are any questions or comments to be made on this item. Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. If council is looking to defer the matter, I would need a mover and a seconder.
Could we have a mover and a seconder on that? I see Councillor Olson will move it and Councillor Kaur will second. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you. Any other debate, Mr. Mayor?
Any other comments, questions? Not seeing any.
Thank you. This vote would then begin with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Mr. Mayor, your next item on the agenda is a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2022-0170 Corporate Services 2023 Budget Schedule for information, and that Council directs staff to include the Budget Open House public meeting to be conducted as part of the regular Council meeting scheduled on Monday, November 7th, 2022, and that the rules of procedure as contained in the Town of Pelham's procedural bylaw be suspended as they pertain to delegations to allow unlimited delegations to register to speak on the 2023 budget as part of the public meeting on November 7th, 2022, and that Council approve the 2023 budget schedule. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any questions, comments on this 2023 budget schedule? See Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering about that, as this council won't be involved in setting the new budget. I'm wondering why that's being pushed ahead of the new council being sworn in.
And let's go to Director of Finance, Ms. Quinlan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The public meeting feeds into the budget process. So the information that we receive from the budget, we actually include that. We have a slide in our presentation to say this is what the public has said. And when we present to the new council, they will hear the comments made by the public. So any decision related to what the public wants is done by the new council. This just allows us some time to put it as part of our budget package.
Thank you.
Theo wants to add more to that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor, the vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Mr. Mayor, your next item on the agenda is a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2022-0171 Corporate Services Ontario Trillium Foundation Capital Grant for Information, and that Council approve the grant application for Ontario Trillium Foundation's Capital Grant Stream for a new accessible universal washroom and upgrade to existing washrooms at Centennial Park in the amount of $150,000. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, discussion on this item? Councillor Olson?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Public Works. Do we have a budget for this, for these additions? Or I understand 150,000 is the maximum for the Trillium grant that we can apply for. Is it more than that?
To the Director?
Here, Mr. Mayor, the renovations that we're looking at doing, we would maintain within the $150,000 and stay within the amount of the grant. So we don't have any additional capital funds currently budgeted for that project.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? We definitely look forward to getting this grant. It would be all the work that this council has done on Centennial Park. This would be the last, maybe not the last, but it'd definitely be a suitable building thing. Building project is the word I want. Building project to look after the increased population that is now using this park. But the splash pad, anybody who drives by this park in the last 2 weeks, you'll realize that the usage of that park has skyrocketed with that addition. Back to you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, next item is a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2022-147 Parking Options for Village of Ridgeway at Bulk Water Filling Station for Information, and that Council directs staff to proceed with option blank, being the options listed in the report are 1, conventional asphalt parking area, to option 1A, conventional asphalt parking area with associated lid features to control runoff. Option 1B, conventional asphalt parking area with catch basin and infiltration trench to control runoff. Option 2, permeable pavement, porous asphalt parking area with associated lid features to control runoff. And option 3, permeable stone paver parking area with associated lid features to control runoff. To you, Mr. Mayor. for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Any questions or comments on this report? Councillor Kaur?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the clerk. Even though I put the motion forward, I'm not going to agree with spending any money. Is there a problem with that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, there is no issue with that. Moving a motion simply puts it on the floor for discussion, doesn't indicate that you support it or not.
Okay, so moving forward through you, Mr. Mayor, I just can't see spending over $34,000 to $36,000 when we have a major issue with the River Estate Park where we need fencing right away, and we could divert this money over to that. Not saying that parking is not important in this area, but I think our kids are more important. And I visit that park twice in the last week, and it's just one soccer ball away of having a child's life in danger. And that park is so close to the catch basin. And we, as politicians, need to protect our residents and especially our kids. So I won't be supporting this. And I hope that we could divert this money over to a temporary fencing to protect our kids. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Olson. And may I remind Council that the motion has not been put forward to Council at this time for that project. Any other comments or questions on this staff report from Council? Councillor Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Director of Public Works. Option 2 refers to a significant amount of maintenance. I think it's because, am I looking at the right one? There's one that has a significant amount of maintenance due to needs power washing and that type of thing, quite frequently.
To the Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that would be option 2.
Yeah,
in that option, you're substituting conventional asphalt with porous asphalt, and that's designed to let the water infiltrate through the asphalt surface into the lower base, and then obviously recharge back into the groundwater system. The problem is, especially in our climates with salting and sanding operations and snow clearing operations, the pores of that asphalt will tend to get glued up with material and not allow it to function properly. So there is some ongoing maintenance that's required to make sure that pavement stays porous and allows the free drain.
And the water trucks presumably would not be allowed on that portion of the parking lot, I guess.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the water trucks they have their own directional way in and out, and they would be off of the pavement structure for the parking area.
Councillor Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Hahn?
Through the Mayor to the Director of Public Works. So was this a budgeted item? And if not, where is the money coming from?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this is currently not a budgeted item as part of our 2022 capital program. So there'd be 2 options available. One would be to fund it in the current capital year, which would require a transfer from road reserves. The other would be to defer the project to a future budget, in which case it could be presented to council at that time for consideration.
Thank you. I think if I had to pull money from reserves, it would be to possibly, definitely save a child's life over parking. So I would definitely agree with Councillor Kaur here that trumps as far as the level of importance for using reserve money.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Stewart.
Yes, I too am in agreement with Councillor Kaur and Councillor Olson. It's not budgeted, so I believe this should be deferred to the 2023 budget. And again, if money was going to be pulled from reserves, I understand the need for fencing and saving lives is a huge priority. But if the money couldn't go there, I would like to see any reserve funds put on the MCC parking lot because we need to serve our citizens first. We built the community center for them, and we need to provide the proper servicing for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? I have a few myself, but I'll go last. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Public Works Director. Basically, when it comes to the options, I obviously wouldn't support option 2 and 3. That I don't think is feasible because of a number of reasons. But I'm still concerned about the funding because I know that we just had a major storm go through town, and I'm sure that those funds, there's going to be a significant draw on some reserve, or the question I guess have is, where's the funding coming from for that? I know it's not related to this, but it's related to, am I going to improve 30-some thousands of dollars on parking without it being a budgeted item? I guess in the end, that's the position I'm in. I'm not against it, but I'm just wondering when it should be done.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Go ahead, Director of Public Works.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we did receive quite a storm last week. We are in the process of assembling those costs. We're still early, and we are assembling those costs. We will present council in a report later on, September-ish, with respect to what those costs were for that storm event. Those would be carried under operating costs. This would be a capital project and a capital expenditure. So Teresa can comment with respect to funding, where that would come from for the capital works. And
to you, Director of Finance, Ms. Quinlan.
Yep. So through you, Mr. Mayor, we have a working funds reserve that currently has $472,000. In there is some contingency funds for these types of things. So depending on what the costs are, if there's road related items, they can come out of the roads reserve. If there is anything related to the parks and trees, they can come out of that reserve. So there's a few reserves that can cover the emergency. We're also looking at, is there any possibilities for recovery, depending on the dollar amount, for disaster recovery funding from the province. So that is something that we're looking into right now. As soon as I know what the estimated costs are, I will be making some phone calls to see if we can get the province to help cover these additional costs that weren't budgeted. But we do currently have some reserve funds for, as we call it, a rainy day and a stormy day, which is what we had.
Okay, thank you for clarifying those points up. Councillor Hildebrand, any other points?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other, now we go back to the parking options for the village of Vidgeville. Any other comments or questions on that item? Okay, my comments, I believe, are number one, these people have waited patiently for this council. I think we brought it up at least once a year in the budgets. The town spent something like $250,000 10 or 15 years ago to beautify Vidgeville, and we have yet to provide them with suitable parking for their businesses. If we chose option 1, it'd be $26,000. We're a $25 million budgeted company. And to say that this parking, last time I checked, the people of Vidgeville are indeed residents of the town, businesses of the town, bringing people from far and wide to visit their shops. They have had buses stop in at their shops. The buses don't like coming because there's not adequate parking for a highway bus. So again, I will vote for this again. I think they've waited long enough, and it's a very minuscule amount that takes to do option 1. Any other comments before we call the vote? Councillor Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to be clear exactly what we're voting on. You're voting now to approve the expenditure on option one, which is $26,000. Is that what you're recommending?
That's what I'm voting on, yes. That's what I'm recommending. I'm sorry. Yes, that's what I'm recommending.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Olson?
Do you require a mover for that, Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Okay. Yes, we do, Councillor Olson. Okay, you are moving?
I would be pleased to move. I will move that, yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Olson, I'm sorry, Councillor Hildebrand will second. Thank you, councillors. Any other comments? Don't see any. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this is an amendment to amend the motion to include option 1. That's the conventional asphalt parking area. I have the mover as Councillor Olson and the seconder as Councillor Hildebrand. If you have any other discussion, or would you like me to call the vote?
Okay. Again, I will go once more to the mover and the seconder. Any further comments, or are you ready for the vote? Councillor Olson first. You're the mover.
Mr. Mayor, not for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Hildebrand, you're the seconder.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No comment.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
No.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart. Councillor Stewart? Sorry, maybe you were muted.
I'm sorry, no.
Councillor Hahn.
No.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is a tie, 3-3, so it's a defeat. It brings you back to the original main motion.
Okay. And could you read that, please?
The original main motion is to receive the report for information and to direct staff to pursue option blank. Option 1 has been voted on, but it has been defeated. Council can choose another option. Council could choose to receive the report for information and defer the project to the 2023 budget for consideration. There's options such as that.
Okay, thank you. Does any councillor wish to bring forth a option to choose? Councillor Kaur?
Yes, I would like a motion that we defer to the 2023 budget.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Is there a seconder for that? I see Councillor Stewart. Any discussion on this motion? Not. Councillor, sorry, Mr. CAO Cribbs?
Just as a procedural thing, Your Worship, I think we should make this a motion to refer.
Yes.
So that way it will be included in the draft budget that staff direct to the next council's consideration. And we'll have a section of items that were moved to the budget. So obviously the next council will make the choice. We won't totally bake it in, but it will be part of that for sure, as opposed to deferring it implies that you might actually, that you're definitely going to do it. And
yes.
I don't know that you want to speak for the next council, so let's refer it, shall we?
Yep. Okay, Councillor Kaur, are you okay with the
yes.
change? Okay, thank you. Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Thank you very much. So this is a motion to amend the motion to strike paragraph 2, including the options and insert, and that the project be referred to the 2023 budget for consideration. I have the mover as Councillor Kaur and seconded by Councillor Stewart. Any other comments?
Any further questions or comments? Not seen any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. That brings us to the main motion as amended. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, any further discussion on the main motion as amended? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Vote begins with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to your next item on the agenda. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2022-0174 capital projects budget exceedance for information, and that Council approve the award of Pelham Street Reconstruction Phase 3 to Rankin Construction, Inc. in the amount of $5,571,425 plus applicable taxes, and that Council approve a budget increase of $1,106,517 for projects RD 11-22 and $617,365 for WTR 0122, and that Council approved the additional funding for Pelham Street Phase 3 from Capital Projects RD 13-21 Pelham Street Phase 2 in the amount of $472,327, RD 03-20 in the amount of $96,229, Pelham Street Phase 1 from RD 13-2022 in the amount of $223,833, Effingham Street Reconstruction, and $39,500 from WST 02-22 II Sanitary Sewers for a total amount of $831,891. And that Council approve additional funding in the amount of $617,365 from the town's water reserve and $274,626 from the town's road reserve. And that Council approve the canceling of the Church Street upgrade tender and deferment of the project to the 2023 capital budget, and that Council approve the canceling of the community event space for a Peace Park tender and redesign the project to meet budget, then retender. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion. However, I will just note, I do believe that staff do have an update on this report. Perhaps the Treasurer or the CAO would like to speak to it.
Thank you. Let's turn to the Treasurer, Ms. Quinlan Murphy, Director of Finance.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, I do propose an amendment to the last paragraph with regards to the community event space, the addition to Town Hall. May I read that?
Yes, of course.
That the motion be amended to strike the last paragraph and insert, and that Council approve the award of the community event space for Peace Park project to the lowest bidder in the amount of $1,824,000, and that Council approve the additional funding in the amount of $161,630 from the municipal reserve and $525,000 from the development charges obligatory reserve. And so through you, Mr. Mayor, I have gone back and looked at where the funding could come from, and I have consulted with Watson and Associates with regards to this particular project, which is the addition to Town Hall. This grant that we received a grant for $750,000, sorry, to fund this project. And the reason why we received the grant is that because it supports community events and community space. And that's the key thing with this project in creating a community room and also the public washrooms. So saying that, we referred back to our development charge study, and we are eligible to allocate $525,000 from our DC obligatory reserves to this project. And I also went back to the year-end results of December 31st, 2021, and our year-end for last year was $588,803 higher than what was budgeted from the development charges. So I feel confident that we can allocate the additional $525,000 towards this project. With regards to the facilities reserve, we also have done much better at the end of the year by about $543,000. So that's where the $161,000 is coming from. So this is above and beyond what we had budgeted. So I am confident that the allocation from these reserves will be able to fund the complete project.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. Mr. CEO, any comments before I go to council?
No, that's a fair assessment. We kicked the tires really hard. I mean, the challenge here, of course, is the published deadline. We had to have coherent advice for you, and so we came in a very conservative manner. And then the reports get published, while simultaneously, Mr. Marr, Ms. Quinlan Murphy, and I were sort of, kicking the tires and examining our legal options. And we have another one for you. Whether it's attractive to council or not is for you to decide. But it is a viable option as opposed to slimming the project down dramatically so as to fit within the third-party funding envelope.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll now go to council. Any questions or comments on the reports? Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor, so has the Finance and Audit Committee had a chance to review this?
For you, Mr. Mayor, the Finance and Audit Committee does not meet anymore. It's finished for this term of council.
Okay.
Councillor? Oh, that's it? Okay. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you. I'm in favor of the project, but let me read you some of my disappointments. So you know what we need in the future. And there's going to be one ask I'm going to have, and I'll ask the corporate director or public works director to comment on that. The addition includes a few design considerations to remove carbon, mostly electrical equipment. With such a small addition, a couple of washrooms, 2 rooms, it would be very difficult to support integration of renewables or low carbon technologies as part of the overall project cost of $1.2 million, the original cost. Although that's one of the things that zero carbon and all those things are the things I think we need to build buildings to. But I understand the situation that we're in, and the grant is here and the design is done. In the future, I would say there are opportunities. When there's opportunities of integration of a geo-exchange system or a solar PV system should be considered part of the retrofit. I think that those are the options we should be looking at. I looked at some of the other projects that other municipalities and towns are doing, and as you know, there's a fire hall that's actually less than net zero, and they're returning more energy than they're even using up north. And there's other towns that are building similar buildings. Realizing the consideration of the budget, the one request that I'm going to have, and I know I've been talking to the Director of Public Works, and there's been correspondence with the Treasurer as well, and that includes the inclusion of a BAS system and the related equipment connectivity for remote control, because that's where you're going to save at least 30% of operating costs. So I'm not sure whether the Treasurer would like to address that request or the Director of Public Works to see where we stand on that.
Thank you. Let's go to Director of Public Works. Any comments on those?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have been in contact with the architect that did the design for the building, and they have confirmed that we can connect this system to the BAS system that would control the building. So that is definitely a possibility, and we will be looking forward to doing that as part of this project.
Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director. Do I need to make a motion, or is that one thing that's going to be done?
To the Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's going to be part of the project.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the project? Councillor Corr.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Treasurer. I'm just want to make, and maybe she can answer this question. The $617,365 from the water reserve. What does that leave us in the reserve after we take that money out?
To the Director of Finance.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the current reserve that we have at the end of December 31st, 2021 is $1.3 million, but in the 2023 budget, we will be adding additional funds and offsetting capital costs. So right now, the reserve has $1.3 million, so there is enough in there to cover it. And the reason why it's coming out of the water reserve, and the Director of Public Works can expand on that, is that the additional increases to the Pelham Street project, the majority of that is coming from the pipe costs. I know, Jason, if you want to expand on that, and that's why it's coming from that reserve.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Treasurer, that's about a 45% taking from that reserve, 45% almost from the water reserve. And also the other question is the $274,626 from town road reserves. What is the percentage, and what does that leave us in the reserves?
Currently, on December 31st, 2021, there's $3.6 million in the roads reserve. So the roads reserve definitely can absorb the $274,000 of an allocation.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, can we not just take more from one reserve, or we don't have access?
No. So through you, Mr. Mayor, the water and wastewater reserves are funded from the user fees, and so any water and wastewater related capital projects have to be funded from those reserves. So we can't move money from one reserve to the other. It's how they're funded. So if it's a water project and the costs have gone up higher in water, then it has to come out of the water reserve.
Okay, my final question to the Treasurer. Are we comfortable with having a reserve of roughly $700,000 in the town water reserve? And I know you gave me exact numbers, but is that going to be adequate enough?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, the balance the year before was $946,000. The issue we have here is that we have a project, the Pelham Street project has a $4.2 million grant associated with this project. And these are costs that, due to the inflation, what's going on right now, are out of our control. I know that we're looking at the water, we're working on the 2020.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director, you're muting.
I'm sorry. We're currently working on the 2023 budgets right now and preparing for them. And one of the things we have looked at is the allocation of salaries between the wastewater and the water reserves, because there was more being allocated to water. So I think there should be additional funds going to the water reserves based on the actual time that people spent between both of them. So I feel like I am comfortable with that amount coming out of the water reserve.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, my last question to the Treasurer, is there any other projects that we could cancel other than Church Street?
Well, the Church Street is being deferred to 2023.
Well, deferred, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Deferred.
I'll pass that to the Director of Public Works.
To the Director of Public Works, Mr. Marr.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Most of our capital projects for 2022 have been executed or in the process of being executed. So there is no other projects at this point in time which could be canceled.
Thank you, sir.
Right, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments on these items? Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The Church Street upgrade and the plan to have that done is for future development. Do we know how far in the future that development is going to occur and how soon we need to have that done?
To Mr. Cribbs, Mr. CAO.
A reasonable guess, and keep in mind, I have to use the word guess because it's not completely within the municipality's control, would be 2 years from now.
So there would be time to have that work done ahead of the development.
We feel comfortable in suggesting that this be the project that is deferred because we feel we still have adequate time. And I can't speak for Mr. Marr just yet. We're in the budget process, but I would imagine that's going to be either his highest ranking project or really, really close to it as he comes to the budget table for next year.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Hahn?
Through the mayor, so this is predicated on continuous increases in water and wastewater. So earlier in the year, we raised those rates. I wasn't in favor of the way that we took that, but nonetheless, we did. So I'm just wondering, is this, are we still looking at sizable increases then for water and wastewater for next year?
To the director?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a bit early for us to say that, but just looking at where the results were last year, and we brought down the wastewater rate from what was recommended by the BMA study. So this is another year for us to look at our rates to see what the rate, what the increase should be. It's too soon to tell. Don't forget, we're still one of the lowest in the region. So I know, the 4 years of not increasing any of the rates really has set Pelham back as far as it's the rate funding that pays for the capital projects, because I can't move tax levy dollars to cover water or wastewater.
Understanding though that particular study was done, I think it was 2017 or 18, so it's pre-COVID, and people, and with interest rates and everything that's happening right now in the economy, I just don't think we're in a position to ask for another, what was it, 7% and 9% increase for water and wastewater. That's just way too high. So I just would hate to see that in 2023 budget, we're going to ask for those kind of increases of 7 and 9% again from our residents in order to make some of these things happen. That's just steep. And anyways, at this point, what you're saying is we don't have an idea, but does it sound like 7 and 9% it would be feasible for you to ask for that again this year?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, last year's final numbers were 7.5 for both water and wastewater, not 9.5.
But that's not the original ask was 7 and 9. We actually wore it down to 7.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your original ask was higher than that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was following the BMA study. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. The pre-COVID study. Yeah. Thanks.
I see CAO Cribbs has something to add.
I think probably the only fair thing we can say, because we can't really consider a budget that's not in front of a council that won't be passing it, is that everything Councillor Hans brought up is certainly a source of worry throughout the corporation and those of us who have to help plan and build the budgets, and we'll be very aware of it. I think as a broad proposition, it's not just the town of Pelham. When I talk to the other CAOs in Niagara, we're all and I talk to CAOs, and Ms. Quinlan Murphy has the same conversation with the treasurers, and Mr. Marr has the same conversation with his analogs. Next year, I think a lot of area municipalities are going to either have to consider approving fewer projects because they cost more, or spending more to get the same. I mean, that's really what it's going to boil down to. So the question is, what will be an appropriate rate of increase? We can't know. That'll be determined possibly by 7 of you, by 7 people, 6 months from now. But what they get for it, it'll be a different value proposition. And I think we're just going to have to bring different slates of options that involve more or less work for the council today to choose from, because frankly, it looks like the prices are going to be much higher, and we'll either get less for the same amount of money or we'll spend more money. One of those two is likely correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CAO. Any other comments, questions, Councillor Olson?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I am a member of the Finance and Audit Committee, and I think that they would have difficulty with. I shouldn't speak for them. But I have difficulty with taking money out of the reserves. And it's a philosophical difference that I can overcome, just because I think this is an opportunity that comes this way once and doesn't come this way again, because I don't think there's going to be funds made available for these types of things. So I think we do have a wonderful site there, and we have a place where people can meet. And I think that in my mind outweighs the the philosophical problems I have with the with spending out of reserves. So I'm going to be voting in favor of this, I think.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I also will be voting in favor. It's a $750,000 grant that if we don't go ahead with the project, like you say, the chance of that grant coming again for this particular purpose is probably very small. All levels of government are going to be seeing belt tightening in the next 1, 2, 3 years, whatever it is. Also, as I stated earlier in the evening, it's time this town progressed from porta potties and gave our citizens sanitary washrooms at the events that they attend, at the money that we've spent on Peace Park in the last year or two, and the events that we do hold. Obviously, the washrooms are going to be used on a daily basis, and definitely make our events that much more attractive. So I also will be voting in favor of this. Any other questions or comments before we turn to the clerk? Councillor Hahn?
Through the mayor to the treasurer, have we looked into the possibility and recognizing at this point that we've talked about this $750,000 grant has to be basically used by, I think, March, right? March of 2023?
February 28th.
Okay, and so does that mean that the construction needs to be underway or completed by?
Substantial completion.
Okay, so have we looked into any opportunity to ask for a extension on that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I have asked for an extension. The answer was no, and I've also asked for an increase in funding because of the 50% increase that we received, and the answer is no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any, I turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. The treasurer has suggested an amendment to that motion, which was presented within the report. If council wishes to do that, I would need a mover and a seconder for that amendment.
Okay, the amendment now read by the Director of Finance, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Is there a mover and a seconder for the motion put forward by Ms. Quinlan Murphy? I have a Councillor Hildebrand will move it. Is there I see Councillor Olson will second. Okay, thank you. On that motion, now that we have a mover and a seconder, is there any other comments before we turn to the clerk? I see none. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. So this is for the amendment. The vote begins with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. That does bring you to the main motion as amended. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, back to the main motion. Any other questions or discussion? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. And the mover will be Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Olson. And the motion for the vote will begin with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, that brings you to your next staff report, and this is a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2022-0154, Recommendation Report, Town of Pelham Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw and Housekeeping Official Plan Amendment, and that Council direct planning staff to prepare the bylaw for approval of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw, and that Council direct planning staff to prepare the bylaw for approval of the Housekeeping Official Plan Amendment. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions on this item? Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's a massive document that requires a lot of reading and comprehension. At this point, I would like to divide the motion to receive the report until council has more time to digest what's in the report and get their questions answered about it before we go ahead and adopt it. Thank you.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, council could divide. However, I worry if you did that, you would simply receive it for information, then there would be a potential to vote down the approval of the other the other two paragraphs, and therefore perhaps just defeating it. I wonder if council would prefer just to defer consideration. I don't know if the CAO has another suggestion.
To the CAO?
Well, actually, that makes a fair bit of sense. That being said, you might be premature in the analysis. What Councillor Stewart may well be the case, or it may not be the case. So what I actually think you need to do is have a little bit of discussion and keep that in mind, because frankly, it feels premature. Certainly, the motion to receive is self-evident. I mean, you need to do that just procedurally so that we eventually can move on with the evening. But you may have consensus that it's adequate or satisfactory even, or you may have consensus that one or two areas you want to hear more about or require further work, whatever that may be. So I don't know how you can arrive at that conclusion just yet.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. We've heard from Councillor Stewart. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a myriad of questions, but the most important question is the motion basically as presented indicated that we're just providing a recommendation. So for everyone's benefit here on council and everyone that's listening tonight is not a confirmation or an approval of the zoning, passing the zoning bylaw. And I'd like the Director of Planning to address that.
Okay. To the Director of Planning, Ms. Weens.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Yes, the recommendation is certainly to receive the zoning bylaw, and it's being recommended for adoption at the next council meeting. So you are not adopting the bylaw tonight. We can certainly have conversations and discussion about the bylaw and hopefully answer your questions. And if there's some direction for further amendments, we're happy to receive those. And then we would bring the bylaw back for adoption in August. So tonight is the recommendation report. And as is, our typical practice, the bylaw would come to council at the next meeting. And in this case, that's August 22nd, I believe.
Okay.
So a month from now.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That was my main question. I have a lot of smaller questions, but I defer my second, third, and fourth question to the other councillors to give them a chance to ask any questions, pertinent questions they feel necessary.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor to the Director of Planning, can you just walk me through how this will affect hoop houses? So what the outcome is for folks with hoop houses?
To the Director?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, through you. So hoop houses are permitted in the agricultural zone. And they're permitted. They have to meet their setbacks from lot lines, and that would be it from a zoning perspective. They are still required to have a building permit, and that's been our practice. The coverage requirement for hoop houses, there is no maximum lot coverage for hoop houses.
So effectively, there's no change from today to tomorrow if this was adopted.
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments before we return to Councillor Hildebrand? Councillor Olson?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I look at this in terms of as a climate document, and I think it does an excellent job. One of the things that we have to have is our urban boundaries established, and this plan there, this does that. And it protects our wetlands, designated wetlands and woodlands that are designated. And those are big steps in terms of a climate crisis steps for us. Now, the next step should be to develop some standard green development standards for building and for our buildings and our developments. So I look at this as being a necessary and important first step towards the eventual development of call it the Pelham Green Standards for construction and new buildings. And this will give us a chance to make sure that we get the densities right. You have to get the densities right before I think you get the building permit or the building standards right. And this does that. And the other thing that it does that's a favorable thing is it establishes the possibility of small businesses starting in our communities and on our farms, which has an impact on succession from senior family members to junior family members, because we can now have 2 people employed on a business on a farm. And I think those are the things that are important to the community and to keeping young people living here and working here. So that, I think it's an excellent document. It's not a perfect document. There are things that can be changed, I think, but I think this is a great step in the direction of establishing us as a climate leader.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions at this time? I guess one to the question before I go back to Councillor Hildebrand, to the director. I know that when the Niagara region passed its official plan, it was continually stated that it was a living document, that we passed it to give us a foundation, but it could be changed as the years go on. But that also be a right a description of this document.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. That's certainly true. It's not a static document. And, you know, one of the things that we're going to embark on next is a review and update on our official plan. And I would expect coming out of that, that in turn will result in further changes to the zoning bylaw. There are some things that the zoning bylaw cannot do because we don't have the legislative authority under a zoning bylaw to do certain things. And we've heard from some members of the public with respect to that, such as, you know, being able to regulate tree removal. That's not something that a zoning bylaw can do. So I want to, you know, stress that what we can do, we will do in the zoning bylaw. As Councillor Olson indicated, our wetlands are being protected. They're going into an environmental protection 1 zone that doesn't permit any development in it, just conservation of land. Currently, our wetlands don't have that protection. And so this is pretty significant. And same with our significant woodlands. Also, what this zoning bylaw does, it provides for buffers around those significant features. And so currently the zoning bylaw does not do that. And so you could, you know, if you complied with all other regulations of the zoning bylaw today, you can, you know, build in a wetland, or you could build right up against a significant woodland or in a woodland. And so, you know, I think this zoning bylaw is certainly trying to address the issues that we can address based on our current policy direction that we have in our official plan. And if our official plan is amended and provides for changes in that policy direction, the zoning bylaw will also be required to be updated and brought into conformity with it. What the zoning bylaw, you know, cannot do, as Councillor Olson alluded to, was, you know, design standards. That is another tool, but it's not part of a zoning bylaw. And do we need to amend our engineering design standards? Those are things that, again, as we update our official plan and provide policy guidance, then we can amend those other tools that can achieve some of the things that council wants to achieve. So I think the zoning bylaw has been very long in the making. There's been a lot of public consultation. We, had a number of meetings with the public over the last 18 months. We've had virtual meetings. We've had online meetings. We've had our Tuesdays with Tara for a period of 6 months every day or every Tuesday of every week, available to consult with the public. We've gone out and we've had open houses in person as well, and we've met one-on-one with a number of people. So we're fairly confident that the zoning bylaw does a number of things that the community has asked for. But there are certainly some things that we can't do, and we've tried to be open and transparent with the public about that. And yes, it is a large document. It takes a long time to go through. We issued a draft to council in March. We had a revised draft in June, and we're here again. And so there's been a lot of work that's been done in the last number of months to bring us to this point, and we feel, we're pretty much here at the finish line, and would like to see this bylaw be adopted in August.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Weens. Any other? Well, Councillor Olson, we already heard from you. I'm sorry. Let's go back to Councillor Hildebrand. Councillor, we'll give you 2 more questions, and then I'll go back to Councillor Olson. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Go ahead, sir.
I have more than 2 questions, but I'll go with 2. I think what the Director of Planning just talked about was a lot about what people want to talk about is low impact development practices, because that's what mitigates flooding, talks about water retention, and all the practices that need to be developed around wetlands. But I want to get into some more specifics, and it gets a little more specific so the residents can understand what we're reading and what's being planned. One of the concerns was from residents, there was a long list of exemptions, and I know there's been a lot of meetings. I just want you to reconfirm how all these concerns have been addressed. And then I guess the second question would be, is how does the new zoning bylaw address the town's natural heritage features? Thank you.
Okay, Director of Planning, Ms. Weens.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. The number of exemptions in the bylaw, there are a number of them, and a lot of them relate to properties that have zoning approvals on them. And so they were things that already existed and had approvals, and we're carrying them forward to continue to recognize them as exceptions. There are, however, a few additional ones that we've added, I believe about 8, and these were primarily in the rural agricultural area to recognize some existing businesses that exist on either farm properties or rural properties and would be considered to be an agriculturally related use or an on-farm diversified use. And so we've recognized those in the zoning bylaw to permit them. They would otherwise be permitted. And we've had discussions with regional staff with respect to this approach. We've reviewed them with them, and they've agreed with the approach and are confident that the approach is correct, and it does implement both the provincial policies and provincial plan policies as it relates to agriculturally related and on-farm diversified uses. So those are some of the things that we've done with respect to the exceptions that are in the bylaw. With regards to the protecting of natural heritage systems, so there are 3 environmental protection zones that have been added. These 3 zones implement the policies in our official plan with respect to environmental protection and the degree and levels of protection. With the environmental protection one providing the most significant protection, and those are on our significant woodlands and provincially significant wetlands and do not permit development. And then there's the environmental protection 2 and 3 zones that do allow for some agricultural uses in those zones, and again, conservation uses, and the protection of the features that are within those zone categories. So that is the intent of the environmental protection zones. We've also mapped the Greenbelt Natural Heritage System in the zoning bylaw so that people can understand where that is and the extent of that Greenbelt Natural Heritage System. So the Natural Heritage System includes the features, and it also includes the area beside the features and the linkages and the connections between features. So it too is an important layer to have mapped so that people can understand when we talk about the natural heritage system, it is a system approach. It's not just the feature, but it's the land that connects the features to one another as well. So that's what we've done with respect to the natural heritage features and systems. We've certainly mapped them and recognized them in the zoning bylaw. And then the highly valuable features, they've also been protected and do not allow for development.
Okay, thank you. On those 2 questions, is that good, Councillor?
That is good for those 2 questions, yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And before I go to Councillor Olson, to the Director of Planning, I take it that the region's NHS, Natural Heritage Systems, are exactly the same as Pelham's Natural Heritage Systems. Is that correct?
That's my understanding now. I do know that the region, through their official plan, has updated and mapped their natural heritage system. We were looking at what was in our current OP with respect to natural heritage systems. And our mapping, again, was fairly up to date because our OP was from 2014. And my understanding is it does mirror the regional mapping.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Olson, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask a question about, and I suspect I know the answer already, and I think it's how we could get the national model building code to include more and more of our green standards, our LID, and then leading to that to the Ontario building code, because I think they have to be harmonized, and I suspect it's going to be that's going to be representations by the general public and perhaps by council to the government to get those included in that fashion. Any thoughts on that, Ms. Weens?
To the Director?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. The Ontario Building Code is reviewed quite regularly, and there's regular updates to it. I know that the province was looking at some significant changes to it with respect to some of the green building measures. That got put on hold during COVID. I don't know when the timing of that is to come back. So I can't answer that question precisely, but it is something that I know that the province does look at, and they are responsible for, regulating building materials and those kind of things with respect to buildings. It comes out through the Ontario Building Code. They have made changes. I think it was around 2015 with respect to energy savings, and have changed the standards and updated the standards around energy saving design with respect to new construction. That was kind of the last big one that they did. But it is something that they regularly review and update.
I think what happened is it's beyond the industry capacity for all new buildings to have LED or LID and green standards, and they were proposing a tiered approach where buildings over 3 stories would have LIDs and low impact developments and green standards, and buildings below 3 stories until I think it's probably 2 or 3 years out, then all buildings would be taking that. I believe that was the approach. But I'm looking forward to the time when we can encourage more innovative type building codes in the town, because you know, the prescriptive type of approach doesn't really allow for innovative construction, and I'm looking forward to that day. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? I see Councillor Hahn.
Yes, through the mayor, to the director of planning. So we all received and we accepted correspondence tonight, the 5-page document from Mr. Nohara, and just to address a couple of those concerns. First of all, I guess, would you be responding back to him and copying us on all your answers to that document? Or what is the plan as far as this document?
Ms. Weens?
He's asked several questions.
Mr. Mayor, through you, is this a new document that came?
It was accepted as correspondence tonight, and it was 9.2, I believe the number was 9.2 under correspondence. About 5 pages. It speaks to speaks to the changes, proposed changes for the zoning bylaw, and just it's 5 pages. So in the interest of time, I mean, I'd like to address them, but
yes,
the meeting will go on for a very long period of time if I address every single one of them. But the key ones, I guess, that really pop out for me is I just want to make sure that anybody who is going to have a change to their zoning, site-specific zoning, have been in fact notified of this proposed change, and they've had an opportunity, because there's hundreds of these people in our town that would fall into this category, so that everybody would have received notification in fact the proposal to your land and this, going from this and to this zoning, here's the net effect it could have on you, and would you have comments? So has everybody in fact had the opportunity that would be affected to have an opportunity for comment?
Ms. Weens?
So, Mr. Mayor, through you, I'll address your first question first with respect to Mr. Nohara's letter and his comments. We can certainly respond to that. That's not an issue, and happy to respond and copy council on that response. That's not an issue. With respect to have we notified every single resident of any changes on their property, the answer is no. We cannot do that. We have certainly had a lot of meetings, and we've had a number of consultations with people. We've advertised open houses in the newspaper, and we had fairly good turnout at those, and we've talked to lots of people about their individual zoning on their lands. Ms. Richardson has fielded, countless phone calls from individual property owners who've called and wanted to know, how does this affect me? And so we have fielded all of those, but it's virtually not possible for us to mail out notices to every resident in the town of Pelham. That's just a task that's way too onerous.
Well, yes, but at the same time, it wouldn't be every residence. I'm talking about the ones that are specifically going to undergo a change, right? So all of a sudden, it's they're going from this type of zoning to another. Those are in the hundreds, not the thousands, I would suspect.
Well, there's quite a number because the environmental protection zone affects a lot of properties, and while they have that designation in the OP, they currently weren't zoned that. They may have just had a straight up agricultural zone, so now they will have an agricultural zone and an environmental protection zone. Those with the site specific exceptions that got changed, Those ones, I do believe we'd reached out and talked with the property owners. But where we've just updated the bylaw to bring it into conformity with our official plan, and they are more broad changes, no, we haven't reached out to individual property owners.
Because I suspect going forward, just even we've learned just recently as council with we talked about earlier in tonight's meeting, the secondary dwelling units, the change from going, thinking you're in rural and you can build a nanny suite in a small off your house, or just I think we had so many yards from your house. I think is something we talked about at some point in time. So many yards from the main dwelling that you could build a small suite and rent it out or what have you to a nanny suite or something like that. All of a sudden can't necessarily happen even if you're not in the heritage designation. I think a lot of people don't watch they don't watch us tonight. There's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to hear and see what we're saying. And the way that it's communicated in the tabloid is always up for debate. But nonetheless, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be rather upset. And yes, there have been, and not discounting the efforts you've taken to have meetings and such. There's still going to be a lot of people that are going to say, I didn't know. So it's worrisome. I think that people are going down the road thinking they can build these suites. And I guess that's my next question too, is that from a legal standpoint, so somebody has bought a parcel of property thinking that they could go ahead, they could do the secondary dwelling unit that was passed by us not all that long ago. And now when we find out that that's not in fact something they can do. So how does that affect us from a legal standpoint? Can they come back on the town? How does this work?
To the director.
Mr. Mayor, to be clear, the tweak that was made with respect to second dwelling units was only impacting those in the Greenbelt Plan area, and it was to provide clarification. That permission never existed. And so it's just to be clear. The zoning bylaw that was adopted by council a number of months ago restricted second dwelling units in the Greenbelt Natural Heritage System. What it wasn't specific on was with respect to existing accessory structures, and now it is, and it's clear. And so I don't think that is a significant change. We certainly are not aware of anyone who this is impacted by. But with respect to legal rights, if they have a building permit that's before the bylaw is adopted, then it is something that we would consider if it complied with the zoning bylaw. But it didn't comply. It didn't comply with the intent of the bylaw. And so we've just clarified the language to be that much more clear. And so I don't believe that there is anything, sneaky going on here, anything untoward. The policies of the Greenbelt Plan are very, very clear. And so and that plan has been in existence for a number of years.
Well, in our dealings with Mr. Nohara and the amazing job he's done for us, with the Cannabis Control Committee, he's a very sharp individual, and he's got 5 pages of questions. So that leads me to then be concerned that if someone such as himself, who stays very much on top of things, still has 5 pages of questions, I would imagine people who aren't as engaged with watching council meetings and may have some concern at a later date. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. May I point out to council, I am in the Greenbelt Plan, and I was not consulted. When the province brought in the Greenbelt Plan, which goes all around the lake, and I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of acres it involves, they did not consult the people of Ontario. So that's one item there. And I'm also in the Niagara Escarpment Commission, and I was not consulted about being in that area. So governments, this town has done a lot more broadcasting of this bylaw, this zoning, comprehensive zoning bylaw, than what they do at other levels of government. They pass laws, they pass zoning, and if you happen to be there, oh well, that's just the, you live with it and you go on. Anyway, any other questions or comments? I don't see, Councillor Stewart, you're either waving or you want to speak.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I have a concern. It's in Appendix B to the report. It's Part E, Plan Implementation and Administration. It's to add new policy section E8, Delegated Authority, to permit town council to delegate the authority to pass certain bylaws under Section 34 of the Planning Act to a committee of council or an individual who is an officer or employee of the municipality. I don't know of any committees of council that have the right to make that kind of decision, and I'm very leery of that. And can you give us an idea of what sorts of things are covered under Section 34 of the Planning Act?
To the director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So that's a new provision that was included in the Planning Act about 2 years ago, and it allows the delegation from council to approve certain bylaws, and they're considered to be minor bylaws. And you delegate that authority to either a committee of council or to staff. And so that the committee of council is the language that's used in the Planning Act, to be clear. And so it's only minor zoning bylaws, and that would be things such as lifting a holding zone. So you've already zoned the property, but you've put it in a holding zone subject to clearance for archaeology, as an example. Once we receive the clearance from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport that the archaeology matter has been adequately and appropriately addressed to their satisfaction, then the holding bylaw could be lifted. What we do today is we bring a report to council, and council makes a decision and lifts the bylaw. There's no appeal of that bylaw. It's a very routine and administrative process. Other types of minor bylaws would be an agricultural purposes only zoning, which we apply to those lands where there's a severance of a surplus farm dwelling, and the remnant farm property gets zoned to preclude any further residential development. So that's consistent with the provincial policy in our official plan. And it's had its public process through the Committee of Adjustment and the decision-making around the consent. So it's in very limited circumstances. This the official plan amendment provides the policy basis to permit the delegation. It isn't granting the delegation at this point in time. That still would require an amendment to our delegation of authority bylaw to do that. So all this official plan amendment is doing is providing a policy to allow for it at some future date, but it doesn't grant it at this point. And it's just because there was this change in the Planning Act, in order for you to have that delegation of authority, you needed to have policies in your official plan. So we're just bringing it into compliance with the Planning Act. So it would only be for minor bylaws, not anything significant. And it's not, it doesn't deal with minor variances. Those still go to the Committee of Adjustment.
To the councillor. Okay, thank you, councillor. Any other questions? And Councillor Hildebrand, yes, I believe we're back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I can assure you, I think this is my last question. So
go ahead.
That will make us all happy. And It just basically is a communication issue. How does the new zoning bylaw and the climate change policy interface with each other to ensure separate policies support one another?
To the director?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Yes, certainly climate change is, is important. It's important to all of us. Again, I think one of the things that this zoning bylaw does is it protects kind of our significant natural heritage features, being our significant wetlands and woodlands, and continues to allow them to be, seeps and allow them to do carbon sequestering and those kind of things to help mitigate against some of the impacts or effects of climate change. The zoning bylaw also provides for more compact development, again, trying to provide for more walkable communities and those kind of things to help address and mitigate on climate change. The zoning bylaw provides for, encourages the use of permeable pavement, again, a considerable feature and an element to help address. So there's a number of things that are in the zoning bylaw that were, specific in terms of preparing the bylaw with a climate change lens and trying to address some of the issues with respect to climate change that we can through zoning at this point in time, given the policies that we have.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? I will just, before I call the vote, I would just also like to say that I will vote for this tonight, and I'll be voting for it again next month. Tonight, obviously, it's just a recommendation. I like the where we have gone, again, in the rural part of the town. They can diversify their operations. This will keep family farms in the families, perhaps another generation. And that alone is going to help the rural part of the town. And we have taken steps for the climate change, for greening of the town. There's more to be done, definitely. But this is a big first step, and there's a lot of good points in this bylaw, in this zoning amendment that deserves our consideration. That's all. Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any. I turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, your next item on the agenda is a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2022159, Final Approval of Subdivision and Execution of Subdivision Agreement, 155 Port Robinson Road, by Vivant for information, and that Council directs staff to prepare the bylaw to authorize execution of the subdivision agreement for final approval of the Vivant subdivision. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. Any discussion on this item? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Your next item on the agenda is a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2022164, recommendation for applications for official plan and zoning bylaw amendments 120 Meridian Way for information as it pertains to file numbers OPAM 01 2022 and AM 03 2021, and that Council direct planning staff to prepare the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for consideration. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on this item? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This vote begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that Council for the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same, and that the Mayor and Clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. 1. Bylaw 4474-2022, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 4411-2022 to establish 2022 fees and charges to be collected by the Corporation of the Town of Pelham, and to add fees and charges to the Recreation, Culture, and Wellness schedule as it relates to STEM camp registration. 2. Bylaw number 4475-2022, being a bylaw to authorize and execute a subdivision agreement with Zoran Tomanzik and Christina Sarah Bravo and the Corporation of the Town of Pelham Vivant Subdivision. This is for file number 2060190119. 3. Bylaw number 4476-2022, being a bylaw to provide for the closing and stopping up of part of original road allowance between lots 3 and 4, concession 14 designated as part 1 on 59R 15164 subject lands, declare the town-owned lands described in Schedule A attached to and forming part of the bylaw surplus to the needs of the municipality and therefore available for disposition, and to authorize the sale of the subject lands. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. Any discussion on any of the three bylaws? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to the notice of motion being presented by Councillor Kaur.
Okay. Councillor Kaur?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I mentioned earlier in our meeting, after visiting the playground, and I think it's very important that we erect a permanent fencing there. I could imagine a young mother with 3 kids trying to keep track, and one boy chasing a ball he might have kicked into the ravine or the catch basin. It's just an accident waiting to happen. And I hope we as counselors all agree that we need to make sure that our kids are safe when they go to a playground. If I'm not mistaken, and again, I make a lot of mistakes, that's the only playground on the east side. So there's a lot of kids that would visit that playground on a day-to-day basis. And it would be a tragedy that something happens. And I noticed on the south side, on the other pond or rain reservoir, there is a black fence around most of it to protect pedestrians from reaching over. The only fencing there isn't is on the side of Port Robinson Road and Highway 20. And I know I reached out to the Director of Public Works, and I know he mentioned that he would address it at his next senior staff meeting. So I know the seconder will be Councilor Lisa Hahn, and I hope we could all get on board with this. And I hope we could get some type of expense and we could erect this as soon as possible. So thank you.
Okay. Councillor, to the clerk.
Thank you very much. Our next item is a motion being put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and passed, being bylaw number 4477-2022 to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council of the town of Pelham at its regular meeting held on the 25th day of July 2022. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, any discussion on this item? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for August 22nd, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Any discussion on adjournment? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry, and it is 7:24 p.m., and you can gavel out your meeting.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Right.